Our next speaker is a dreamer, social reformer, and Nigerian national chess master. In 2018, he founded Chess in Slums Africa, a non-profit organization that uses the game of chess as a framework to give children in impoverished communities access to education, technology, and mentorship. Known for his passion for storytelling, public speaking, and advocating for untapped potential, he has shared his ideas on various stages, including multiple TEDx talks, the Oxford Africa Conference in England, and more recently, the prestigious DLD conference held in Germany. In 2023, he was listed as one of 100 most impactful Africans by Ranks Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as we welcome Tunde Onakoya, who will be speaking on creativity and social impact in Africa.
Oh my, look at me. I didn't know I was muted. All right. Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry, it's afternoon in Lagos. Currently out of the country for a bit, so pardon my voice, and also had a really long night, so barely had any sleep. Um, yeah, it's an honor to be here, and yeah, so just to share a few things, at the intersection of creativity and social impact. Um, yeah, so I have some time to just ramble about the work that I do, and I hope, in some sense, everyone listening can find some meaning from this, and I hope hopefully it resonates with you in your own, like within your own capacity, right? Whatever you do, however it is your your birthing ideas, into the world. I think it's important that we understand the power that we have, that whatever we do in whatever capacity, that it really does matter to the world. And the stories that we tell, the things that we do, there's a place for it in the world. And it's important that we never forget that. Um, yeah, so I'll start with this. I'll start with a bit of my journey so you understand why um, I do the things that I do and what I still think I can become. Um, so I grew up in Ikorodu, and it was a very small place, right? We didn't have a lot of access, right? But I had a lot of curiosity. I was very curious about the world, even as a child. And it was that curiosity that led me on a path where, seeing a chessboard for the very first time in a barber shop, I was just, it was love at first sight, really. And I was very, very fascinated by the way the pieces were carved. And I kept asking the barber, what is this? What does this do? Why does it look like this? Um, can you teach me? And at the time, I think I was 10 years old. So it was after my primary school education, and there was no money to go on to continue to secondary school. So I had to drop out of school, and I was at home for 2 years. So I had a lot of time on my hands. So I'd always go to this barber shop, to watch other children that should be in school, waste their time playing video games. And I would just sit there and just watch them. Now, like I said, like seeing a chessboard for the first time was love at first sight. And I um, I couldn't stop thinking about it, right? Because I had never seen something like that before. And the Baba would always say, "Oh, chess is a game for highly intelligent people," right? And because I went to this Bako primary school, yeah, I could barely speak any English, and I wanted to be a smart person. And I thought maybe chess could help me find my own identity, right? So I went back home, and I told my brother, "Oh, I saw this game," and I described it to him, and he was like, "You know what? Let us make our own chess game." And it sounded like a crazy idea, but then we found a cardboard, so we drew the checkered squares. We put the notation on it. Then we found clay, and we molded the chess pieces, the pawns, the knights, the rooks. So I would go to the barber shop. You know, the barber still wouldn't teach me because he thought I was too young. So I would just sit and just watch him and his friends play. So whatever it was, I could learn, I could understand. I'll go back home and teach my brother. They would also play. And with time, um, I got to like understand the intricacies of the game. Just learn the basic rules, and I would always go home and play with my brother. And that was when I found a passion for chess. And a lot of that was really getting back like ownership. And one of the real consequences of poverty, in some sense, is it completely takes agency away from people, right? Because people have been completely removed from systems, rule of law, education, just basic infrastructure that should set them up, right? So yeah, and children that are born into a situation like that, they become victims of their parents' poverty. They become victims of their environment, and the cycle just continues, over and over and over again. And that is why we have like millions of people living in multidimensional poverty. And so for me, growing up in a situation like that and being able to learn chess was me being able to control certain outcomes, of my life. I wasn't sure whether I would go to bed with food or any of that, but I knew that with chess, there was almost no element of luck. It was going to be a direct result of the effort you put into it. If you play well, you'd win. If you play badly, you'd lose. And being able to understand that at that level, even while I was really young, helped me believe that I had some worth as a person and that I could control the outcomes of my own life, right? That I, and just like I was learning chess and I was showing, you know, the great aptitude for it, that I could become anything I wanted in the world, right? I mean, eventually I got back to secondary school and I played my very first tournament. I lost all my games. I said I was never going to play again. I ended up crying, and my coach, told me something, that stayed with me ever since then. And he said this. He said, "See, the thing with chess is you'd always lose, so you need to find a way to deal with that very quickly. Like even the best players in the world champion at the time, he still lost a lot of times, right? But what makes a true master really is, and that is where like true mastery is forged. When you win a game, you get overly excited and you never barely go back, to see the details of the game. But when you lose, you want to really like investigate at what point did I make this mistake? What did I do wrongly? How can I fix this? And that is where you get better at chess. And that is how every beginner became a master because they lost a lot of games and they learned all the important lessons from those games. And it was such an important way to forge like a mindset that truly in chess, there's no such thing as losing or failure. It's either you're winning or you're learning something new because it has to happen. It has to be a part of the process. If you do not lose, you will never be a master. There's no way. It's impossible. And it's very ironic. Like you become a master by actually losing a lot more games and learning from them. And I think that stayed with me. And I went on to finish secondary school. Went on to college on a scholarship. Went pro, and all of that happened. Um, in essence, chess gave me a way to see the world beyond the confines of where I grew up, beyond the corridor. And more importantly, helped me understand what my place in the world was. That I could also be intellectually inclined, and that I could exert myself in this way. And like the skill that I had, it was going to make room for me, and it was going to make people hear me and see me. And that was enough, for a young kid from Ikorodu that had very little exposure, to believe in himself, right? So chess set my life on a much different trajectory. And 6 years ago, I made a decision that I was going to do the same thing for other children like me. And yeah, so that was how the Chess and Slums, project started. Um, so it was a very simple idea, and I was 23 at the time, 6 years ago. I thought to myself, if I could teach children in the slums how to play chess and they're able to gain mastery of it, that it could help them forge their own identities as well. Right? I remember I spoke earlier about how the real tragedy of poverty is it robs people of their agency. Yeah, and children are born into a situation, where they become victims of their parents' poverty, right? And everything is really dependent on that. Is whether you win the ovarian lottery. If you were born to rich parents now, you don't have to worry about all of those things. You get the best education and you go on to live, at least a comfortable life. But for children that are born into, a terrible situation, imagine being born in a village somewhere in Kwara State, and just imagine a situation like that. How does a child like that make it out of there? And so the idea was, if I could teach chess in some of these forgotten places to these children and they could show like aptitude for it, the world would pay attention to them. And in some sense, right, you're giving them back some, not just hope, but you're giving them a way to belong to a global community, because chess is a global game and it's a global benchmark for intelligence, right? It's a very prestigious game. So even in that very small place, in that very small village in Kwara State, if a child can get mastery of it, they finally have something that the world can pay attention to, right? And it was very unclear to me at the time, but I had a lot of faith in it because it was my own story. And it was, how could I relive the story, through other children by sharing the talents that I had and giving it to them as a gift, right? So that was it, just a rough idea at the beginning. I didn't know what, if there was an end point. I didn't know if anything could come out of it. I just knew that I had this talent, and if I share it with the kids, it becomes a gift to them, where they can begin to learn how to think for themselves, and it could be even an entry point into education for them. Because what really is education? It's the capacity for thought, for thinking, for independent thinking, for problem solving, and it's the gifts that we all have that allows us to function in society. And if they don't have that, they're going to struggle. And that is why we would have this proliferation of area boys, of homeless kids on the streets, because they have no capacity for independent thoughts in a way that can contribute meaningfully to society. So these were my thoughts at the time, and I wasn't sure how it was going to pan out because there wasn't exactly a template, but I just went for it and I did it. And 6 years down the line, a lot has happened. And I think we have truly changed the world. And this is something that has become so much bigger than me, or the idea that I had 6 years ago to just teach chess, basically to children from low income communities. It has become a global idea that has given the world something new to believe in, that has told remarkable stories of children, that come from small places but have gone on to do great things, right? So, and I'm giving this context so you understand what a lot of like the thinking behind the work that I do at the inception was, and how I had to become many things, to bring, that idea to life. And bringing it to life was like three things. The first one was, how do you tell the right stories about the work that you do? And the second one was the understanding that an idea isn't complete until other people can find their place in it. So how do you find the right collaborations and the right people to join you on that journey of building it, from that idea to something that can be impactful, right? And I made a few notes here on the things I wanted to talk about, and and the first one really is to delve into what the power of creativity is. What is the power that you have as a creator? And now, two of the best advices I've ever gotten, right, is one, take nothing for granted. And two, you must act like the things that you do, they matter to the world. Now, it's easy to feel sort of like jaded when you see people out there just doing remarkable stuff, exceptional stuff. And you feel like, you in your own small capacity, like, it doesn't matter. This person already does it, or this person does it exceptionally well. So I probably don't need to share. The world doesn't need, what I have to give. Why would the world care about us when there's someone that does it like 10x better? This is a fallacy, and this is the greatest mistake that you would ever make as a creator, to think that your stories do not matter, to think that the things you have to share, the things you can create, do not matter in the grand scheme of things, right? And I've said this a number of times that it is possible to do great things from a small place. What I've even come to learn more recently is, you know, great things almost certainly happen from small places. So you have to embrace the power that you have and never take it for granted, right? You have the power to create something for the world, right? And that thing, it matters, and you need to have the courage to impress it on the world, right? In whatever way, in whatever storytelling method, but you need to have the courage. So it starts with the courage to impress it, on the world. So now, creativity in itself is an act of, defiance, and I'm going to bring it back to our own context in Africa, right? And of course, Nigeria, we have all our problems, staring at us like this, right? So, what exactly is our role as young people in being able to um, tell the right stories that help us, like that give us a sense of direction, right? Because a lot of people are just going to complain about the problems, and that's valid. But through the tools that we have, through the gifts that we have, like how do we use that to tell meaningful stories that can galvanize action? Now, let me bring it back to my own journey at Chess and Slums. Imagine 6 years ago that your idea was chess, an elitist game. You wanted to take it to the slums to teach children. It didn't make sense to anyone because the first question was, how would this put food on the table? And I didn't even have the answer to that when we started out. It became clear with time. But the first question was, how would chess put food on the table? Say, she not chess and good chop. And I mean, it was a reasonable question because the thing about investing in children is it's easy to empower an adult and walk away. But with children, it's such a long term investment that you don't see the results immediately. So there has to be a lot of like delaying gratification. It will take years and years of investment through the education cycles, through even getting a job and being able to to even fend for yourself, right? So investing in children isn't something that becomes immediately apparent, right? So my idea sounded a bit strange to a lot of people because we wanted to like help children by teaching them chess and giving them somewhat of an intellectual identity when what they need is food and survival. Go and teach the chess to rich kids that have eaten first. But these kids that have not eaten, what they need is food and survival. But to me, it was yes, food and survival is good. But if you give them food today, like you go there, you distribute spaghetti, what happens when they're hungry tomorrow again? Right. So it's not sustainable. The greatest gift you can give them is what no one can ever take from them. And that is the capacity for thinking. Right. And when you do that and you give them knowledge and you help instill the right values, no one can ever take that away from them. And it will continue to be a part of their identity wherever they go or whatever situation they find themselves in. And I was very convinced that this was the way to go. Right. So it was a creative way, to rethink charity and stage a new kind of intervention in some of these impoverished communities. Right. So that was my first idea of, you know, just tweaking things a little bit. Right. And I'm sure, like, for some of you listening to this, you might have faced resistance like that. Right. Because what really is creativity? It's like intelligence having fun right? You're having fun with something that had maybe always been the status quo, but you're tweaking it just in a different way. And people are like, this is different, right? Is it effective? Right? You going against the grain to challenge something that has always been, but to do it through a new lens is going to come with a lot of resistance. And that was my thought at the time, that we could use chess, even beyond like being creative with that innovative approach to empowering children. It was the only thing that I had. So it goes back to the question, like, what do you have in your hands? And you cannot take that thing for granted, or you cannot believe that it doesn't matter to the world. It has to, because it's the one thing you have in your hands. It's your talent, it's your gift, it's the ability that you have, is what defines the very essence that you are. Right. So again, like I said, the first note was understanding the power of creativity, the power that you have to create, the power that you have to do something that is unconventional, right? But it can also be impactful given enough time. So you need to understand that power and lean completely into it, right? And somebody says this, and I talk too much. I talk too much is lean into it. The world needs more personality. Own up to who you are. Embrace your story. Embrace your journey, right? And wield it in a very powerful way. Now, the next thing that I have here in my note is storytelling for impact. Now, stories change the world, right? And I'm going to again personalize this. When we started Chess and Slums, I'd never written anything before. I never sat down to like write any long thing, because I never considered myself a writer or someone that could write anything. I love to read quite all right, but I didn't know that I could write anything. But then I started to teach the children. So I used to play piano in church then on Saturdays and Sundays, right? So, but then I committed my Saturdays and Sunday afternoons to go into to Majidon to teach the children along with some of my friends. So I started to miss rehearsals, and I had to make a decision. So I had to resign from church to focus fully on like going to that community to teach the children every Saturday and Sunday. And I was just a chess coach. I would jump on a bus, go there, then trek to cover some distance, then jump on a bus back home. It was quite a distance for me, but it was something I was very passionate about, even though I wasn't earning anything from it. Then one day, I think it was Christmas period, the children brought promise cards that uncle promised me. I don't know if you guys remember, promise cards. Um, Uncle promised me this. So it has like a list of gift items. You can promise them maybe books, money or whatever. And chess coach was broke himself. In fact, maybe I need to take this promise card to my own people so they can start promising me stuff, because I really wish I could help or help solve some of your material needs. But I was dead broke myself. But then I felt for them, because a lot of them would come to the chess classes and they'll tell me, oh, we've not eaten for days now, and that would break my heart, but I couldn't do anything about it. I only had one thing to offer, which was the knowledge that I could share with them through chess. But on that day, I was just doing Father Christmas, and yeah, you take 10 naira, you take 15 naira, you take 100 naira, and on my way back home, I took a bus. I entered Danfo, normally, and I wanted to pay the conductor as I just put my hands in my pocket. So I had felt like, oh, there was still maybe some money left in my pocket. Apparently, it wasn't money. So when I pulled out what was in my pocket, it was letters from the children, paper, like they were writing letters. Uncle Tunde, oh, I need school bag. Uncle Tunde, this and this thing. And bro, the conductor was just looking at me like this. So I had to beg the person next to me that, please, can you pay for two? Because I didn't have any money. But when I got home, I read those letters, and you know, I had this pain that I couldn't meet this needs, and I wasn't sure what to. Can you guys still hear me? Sorry, it went off for a second. Um, so it brought the necessity to, please let me know if you guys can still hear me. So I'm not just rambling. Because it disconnected for a moment there. Can you guys hear me? Okay, all right, good. So, so it birthed a necessity to write this experience, and I remember titling that piece, um, "Letters, um, Letters from Our Future." Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just started to write from there, "Letters from Our Future," and I wanted to detail an experience where these children had dreams, just like us, right? But somebody had to pay for those dreams to be realized, and I was already paying within my own capacity by giving my time, my talent, and my effort to it, right? But someone else had to pay for the resource, right? So I wrote a letters from our future, and I just posted it on my Facebook. Then maybe I had like 10 followers. I don't know, just really didn't really use social media that much, and the post went viral, right? And I put pictures of the letters the children wrote and put in my pocket. And the post went viral, and people were like, "Oh, that first, image. I'd like to meet those needs for that child. I'd like to meet this." And that was how, for the first time, me just writing something and giving people a way to experience the same things that I had experienced working with the children, it affected change, right? And people felt that very deeply. And, they contributed and were able to meet all of those needs. And you can imagine the excitement in my heart, the next weekend when I was going there, to meet the kids with all the school bags and everything, the books that they needed. It was a life altering moment for me, right? It was like I had the power to change the situation because I had spent like 2 hours writing something that I could share with the world, and it bridged an important gap. And this is something you must understand about the way our society is. There's a huge gap between the haves and the have nots. And the only way to bridge that is through storytelling. Stories are the bridge that give us a basis for empathy. And without that empathy, there's very little we can do, right, to bridge this divide. And this is the power that you have as a creator, that you're the storyteller that gets to bridge and stand in that gap for the people who do not have the power to speak for themselves or who do not have the courage. And this is such a beautiful thing to have. And you must never ever, take it for granted. So again, storytelling for impact, very critical. And empathy driven ideas. Now, I talked about like storytelling and empathy, and I'm going to share another story of how, you know, we're able to galvanize action around certain things, and empathy just being the basis for that. Because people live in bubbles, right? Their own experiences are unique to them. And most people never really step out of that. Right. So it's the stories that we tell as creators that help people, that bring people into, a world that is different from what they know, what is their reality. Right. So and how do we approach that, by creating a basis for empathy, right? Is our ability to understand the needs of the people that we're telling stories about, right? And to design solutions for them that is meaningful to them, not solutions, ideas that please us, but that can be meaningful to the people that we are serving or we are um, advocating for, we're telling stories about, right? And I'm not saying this like as creators that, oh, we should start a charity or NGO. Like I'm saying this in whatever capacity that you do, whether as an artist, as a creator, whatever it is you're doing, that there has to be a place where you're also creating room for people. You are using the stories that you're telling to create the sense of belonging that is rooted in empathy. And this is something that you have to do, right? If you want to really blend, the creative prowess that you have and actually impacting some people or some place, in some sense. So now let us bring it back to how we can use our creativity to problems, um, both as a country and as a continent. I think the first real thing is collaboration, right? Um, when we did Chess and Slums for the first 3 years, no one really, no one really understood what we were trying to do. It didn't make sense to a lot of people because, like I said, it was such an elitist idea of chess in the slums. But after I wrote that first story and I saw the effect that it had, I immediately knew the power that I had to affect people's thoughts, right? By just penning down, you know, my my by just like penning down the way that I saw the world, right? And that was hard at first because I never considered myself a writer, and I was a pretty shy and reserved person, right? I could never be the one to speak in front of anyone. So even being able to write something, I became a little too critical, right, of the things I wanted to share. And I'm sure, like, for a lot of people, you've been there at many points. Like, you've created something and you're just, bruh, this thing is not good enough. And you just keep them in your drafts, right? And you have a voice to change a nation, but you're afraid you say something wrong. You're afraid you punctuate wrongly, or you're afraid you do something that doesn't feel good enough to your own standards, and you refuse to share it. And you know you you take something, you know from the world, right? Something that would have connected with someone, even if it's just one person. You deprive the world of that because you're afraid, right, of how people will accept it, or even maybe you're afraid that people wouldn't accept it and it wouldn't get any attention, right? But that is not how um, we should be as creatives. That we should share our ideas regardless of its acceptance, right? And we should put it out into the world. Let these ideas, let this, whatever it is, let it collide with reality. And even if it doesn't immediately start to like create this snowball reaction, it will continue to compound. And someday you will get your moment, whatever that is, maybe your viral moment. And this is what I did, like, for the first 3 years. The first thing I wrote was a hit, and it created this illusion and this standard in my head that I needed to keep operating at that level. But the next few things I wrote, nobody cared about it. But I just kept doing it for 3 years and I just kept writing. But what happened was I was getting better with time, and I mean, you can only connect the dots in hindsight, but I didn't realize it at the time. At the time, I just thought, oh, after using like 4 hours to write the stories of these children, mm, got maybe 2 likes, right? From me and my girlfriend at the time. She was a supportive girlfriend. And but I didn't care, right? Because I didn't even know that. To me, I was grateful if it just got 2 likes. But it was important that I had done what was right and what was important and what needed to be shared with the world. And I wasn't going to hold back from doing that. And I just kept doing it and just kept doing it. Then in 2020, I joined Twitter. It's a funny story how I joined, but and I think I've shared this only once before. The only reason why I joined Twitter was because I had, a bad phase in my life where I got involved with sports betting, and I started following punters so that would like drop codes. It was like a 2 month phase for me. I wanted to use 100 naira to make 10 million so I could go back to Lagos, to get a new place and all of that. I was in Port Harcourt for some time. That was like during like the whole COVID debacle. So that was why I joined Twitter in 2020. But something happened when I joined. Of course, I was there on the lookout for betting codes and all of that. Someone shared a story, like a thread, and I read it to the very end. And I was like, wow. And I sent the person a message, right? And said, you just gave me the courage, like, to start sharing again. Because at the time I had stopped. Then the first day I shared a story of this girl called Basirat, that she was the first girl to ever get a scholarship, from our program. And because she was good at chess, somebody decided to pay for her education all the way to university. And I wrote about this girl. And I just, after using like 4 hours to write everything, because I was still new to Twitter, I just mistakenly deleted the entire thread. And I was like, whoa, oh, this is horrible. Like, how would I ever be able to recall all the things that I wrote? So I just forgot about it. But after a few hours, I thought to myself, I have a lot of time on my hands. I could do this again. Then I tried to recall all of the things, that I've written previously. And I spent a lot of time putting it together again. Then I shared it and I went to bed. And I just woke up the next day and, bro, it had gone super viral, right? And there were people from all over the world that were inspired by the journey of this little girl and now wanted to be part of her story. And that changed the girl's life forever. And you'll never understand how this things, like, made me feel at the time. It's like you have a superpower, right? And the superpower is like with a pen. And whenever you wielded that pen, it could completely change the life of another person because you had managed to, like, in the midst of all of the frivolities in the world, all of the other things on social media, you've managed to create a moment where someone felt seen and heard. And that is magic. And that is the power that we have. And what is that enabler? It's technology. So it's a collaborative effort with your ideas, colliding with reality, and using technology to scale that. Right. So, social media, right? It's our most important tools, for storytelling. Like, and even like in the broader context as a continent, as Africans, like for the longest times, our stories have been told without us, right? So this is our time. Like, it's our generation that will rewrite those stories in a way that doesn't demean us, but in a way that celebrates the potential that we have as a country, as a continent. And all of this is entirely in our hands. It's something that we need to understand and we need to wield, you know, we need to wield with a lot of courage, with a lot of courage. Now, um, so that was like my story joining Twitter, and from there, and the beauty of like doing stuff and putting stuff out into the world is that it breeds confident expectations, right? You've done this, like, oh wow, then you do it again, then you do it again, and there will be a lot of high moments and low moments, but you just keep doing it, and by just doing that, right, we changed so many lives because what we literally did was we carved a space, on the internet. We carved a space where, you know, people that have been forgotten, children in Oshodiona Bridge, and for those that have followed our journey in some of the worst slums in Lagos across Africa, I would literally carve the space on the internet through storytelling, you know, that people can come and see them, and not just see them from a distance of like, oh, those children are suffering. You know how the typical African child suffering image depicts, but to see that spotlight can be shown on the potential that they have, right? And potential is nothing if it's not realized, and being able to use chess as a tool to make that, very visible, right? And to make that a basis for us to relate to them and to understand that they can be like us. And while that talent is universal, opportunity isn't. And because we have been able to tell those stories, we're bridging that opportunity gap by bringing the people that have the resource to help into that conversation. And storytelling is the only thing that can do that, right? So remember, like, your tool is social media, like it's technology. And when you have that, you have the ability to affect the world in very profound ways. And that was my understanding then. And of course, this has blossomed into such, a beautiful story, that has helped save many lives and help many children find their place in society. So I don't think I have a lot of time left, but I'll say this. Um, I think as a final thing, the role of purpose. Now, I'm going to read verbatim something I wrote earlier this year. And this is how we give, this is how we give direction to whatever skill or whatever um, ability that we have. Now, Nigeria has a lot of problems, and in a lot of ways, we are almost like very like inclined to solve our own immediate problems, right? It's survival. Nigeria has conditioned us to survival and to care solely about ourselves, right? And it's okay. It's okay to look out for yourself, and do what you can. But I promise you that there's another layer to that, that gives a deeply fulfilling life, right? Which is looking beyond yourself and using the platform that you have to shine the spotlight on other people, right? Or like I said earlier, to give other people that sense of belonging through your stories. Now, earlier this year I traveled to Munich for the first time to speak at a conference. And at the Munich conference, we had this chess exhibition thing where like 10 people paid €1,000 each to play me, but I had to play all of them at the same time. So if I win, they would put that 1,000 euros to our charity so we can support the children in our academy. But if they lose, they don't have to. But I have to play all 10 of them at the same time. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. But what a lot of people don't know is, I gave up playing chess for 7 years. Like prior to like what happened in January, I hadn't played chess in 7 years because I had given up on those dreams just to focus on using, the power that I had through storytelling and the work that we do at Chess and Slums, right, to empower more children and put them in the spotlight where the world can see them and avail them the opportunities that they need, to thrive. So I gave up on all of that, but in January, I decided to play again. And, I beat all of them. Then the video went viral. Okay. Can you guys still hear me? All right. So it was a bit confusing for me because I didn't know how to deal with all of that attention. And I had to bring it down to something. And the only way I know how to do that is to write. And I wrote this, and I'm going to read it verbatim. And this is just bringing all of this back to giving your creative ideas, giving it purpose, channeling it through that purpose pipeline. Because without that, you cannot impact lives. You can impact yourself and you can, make something for yourself. But if you don't channel that gift through a purposeful pipeline, you'd miss out on a great opportunity to change the world as we know it. Now, so I wrote this after that video went viral and there was a lot of attention. And I wrote, Dear Dreamer, recently a video of me playing chess against 10 people simultaneously in Germany has been making rounds on the internet. And this has brought a lot of attention to me as I have gained over 200,000 followers across social media from that one video. It has been a little overwhelming for me, but I think it presents a rare opportunity to share a profound lesson. 8 years ago, I quit playing chess professionally. I was a talented kid who had won a number of tournaments and had great dreams to become a grandmaster. I gave up along the line, partly because there was no way to finance this pursuit of personal glory, and more importantly, because I had found a deeper calling to use my love and knowledge of chess as a tool to empower children in poverty. I was 21 years old at the time, but it seemed like such an unwise decision. I took the road less traveled regardless, and it has indeed made all the difference. This birthed the Chess and Slums project, which has given thousands of children society often overlooks a fighting chance. So I say this to the young, to the old, and to the extraordinarily talented person reading this. Each of you holds a unique talent or skill that sets you apart. And when you use this talent solely for your ambition, it brings you success, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, when you choose to share this gift with others, especially those who may never have the same opportunity, it transforms into something far more powerful. It becomes purpose. So I urge you today to look beyond personal success and envision how your talent, whether in the arts, science, music, eloquence, writing, teaching, tech, sports, can contribute to the greater good and give more people a sense of belonging. And while it may seem extraordinary that one man can play chess against 10 people at the same time, it does pale in comparison to the most significant moves I've ever made, which is dedicating my life and ideas to the service of others. I don't ever want to be remembered as a man who could beat 10 people at chess, but rather as a man who helped children believe they could do great things from a small place. And this is the most important part of what I wrote. The true essence of our talents and gifts is realized not when we bask in the applause on stage, but when we use our stage to give a voice to those who cannot speak for themselves. So, dreamer, know thyself, explore your talent, hone it, nurture it, and when the time is right, share it as a gift to the world. This is how our civilization has advanced because men and women of great talent and creativity had the courage and nobility to share that gift with others. Not one of us can feel his duty done unless he can say that because he lived, something or someone upon earth has been made just a little better. Keep going, dreamer. I hope you never stop giving the world something new to believe in. And this is what I shared, after all of that viral moment. And it brought me the calm that I needed to believe that, I was still grounded in the work that I needed to do. And everything I was doing from the storytelling to playing chess is just a means to that end, right? And let me just bring this back to the conversation we're having. at the intersection of like your creativity, your ideas, the skill that you have, and truly impacting society with it. Right? It has to be driven by purpose. Profit is great, and you will make a lot of that along the line. But you have to be very conscious of how your ideas impact the world and impact the other person positively, especially those you know will never have the same privilege that you have. You know, the question I always ask myself when I go into like gatherings, is who is not here, who is not represented here, and what can I do to use my voice to bring that person to light? Because I have a very interesting life. I've been privileged to like see both sides of the curtains. Like I hang out with very rich people, successful people, and I also spend a lot of my time working in some of the worst slums in the world. So I'm just there in the middle of it. And by being able to use my social media, I've been able to bridge that gap, right? And that is what I do. Like beyond the chess and slums, chess master, I'm just a storyteller. I'm the storyteller that bridges a gap. And there's this quote by Cloud that I love so much. It goes, um, it goes, sorry, a dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the dawn before the rest of the world. And being a creative person, a creator is being a visionary person that can conceptualize and see something that other people do not. And whatever way you decide to present that, makes it like relatable, right? But that is your responsibility first to see a future that no one else sees and to be able to connect that, to the benefit of other people that are excluded, right? That is how we change the world. And that is the entire story of Chess and Slums. On a final note, I recently started reading this book, about Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs wasn't a good person and it wasn't a bad person. It was a fine blend of both. It was both good, at the extreme, and it was really bad, on both extremes. But there was this thing that he had. He and his father, they were, they had just moved into their new house in San Francisco and they were painting the fence. So when they were painting outside the fence, that was like out facing. They put a lot of attention into like painting, the details beautifully painted. But now they now started painting inside the fence. Now imagine painting inside a fence, like nobody will see it, right? So Steve was just painting it shabbily, right? And we were just like, and his father just stopped him and asked, like, why was he painting it, so mindlessly? And he said, no one is going to see this, right? So it doesn't matter, right? It's a part of the fence that is unseen. So, and I don't want to waste the paint. And he told them there that, see, that part that is unseen, right, is where you need to pay more attention to because that part that is unseen is your commitment to excellence for yourself and not for people's validation. And that commitment to excellence for yourself, right, is what makes a true craftsman different from the average person. And that lesson stayed with Steve Jobs, and that was how, like, that was why he did the things that he did. You know, the only person that could have built a product like the iPhone and the computers and the personal computers was someone that was as extreme about details like Steve Jobs. No one else in the world could have ever done it. It had to be him, right? Down to like the screws that were unseen. There was a particular label that needed to be on it, and Steve Jobs ensured that it had it, and it was going to like worsen like their margins, but he ensured that that commitment to excellence in building a timeless product, would become like his own commitment to excellence to himself before anything else. And I would say this, like before you can think of impacting the world or before you can think of like, venturing out there and, using your ideas and, colliding your ideas with reality, you have to ensure that you have built capacity, right? This is important. Like that thing that is internal, not the thing that social media sees, right? That personal development, that character, charisma would only take you so far, but when you have deep character, it takes you all the way. So you must spend a lot of time forging that in silence. That can only be forged in silence. And if you're listening to this now, you worry about like, you're creating and maybe you have just a few followers, a few likes and nobody cares about that. Please embrace it. I promise you that you look back and those will be the good old days for you. Do you know why? Because you still have the liberty to make mistakes when the stakes are really, really low, right? For someone like, imagine someone like Justin Bieber now just doing something irrational on the internet. Every single blog will take it, right? And it's just human. Like he's making the same human mistakes that we all do, but his own mistakes are terribly amplified because he's already in the spotlight. So while you're forging, that capacity in the fire quietly, you have the liberty to make a lot of mistakes, and the stakes are really low. And the beauty of doing that is that you get to grow and learn very quickly, right? When you see people that have accomplished stuff, when they become too careful and you see that they're not doing daring stuff anymore, it's because they're afraid of making mistakes that will be criticized very heavily by the public, right? And that is why maybe even early success can sometimes be a curse, right? So lean into your journey, the progress that you're making, the little things that you're doing, embrace it and love it wholeheartedly. Like fall in love with your passion, right? And it's that thing about like, there are decades when nothing happens, right? And there are weeks when decades happen. And when your own weeks, decades in a week happen, you will be ready for it. You'll be ready to own that spotlight. You'll be able to wield it. And you have arrived finally. But at the end of the day, which is so much more important, you'll be able to use that spotlight to affect other people around you. It doesn't even have to be like on a global level, like even just within your sphere of influence, you'll be able to really affect people in meaningful ways. And that is how we change the world. That is how we impact the world. It doesn't have to be social impact, start a charity, go and start doing all of that. No, no, in the little ways that you can, please do it. The gift that you have. Because remember, when you have a talent and you use it for yourself, it's great. But when you take that talent and you give it to someone else, it becomes a gift to them. And that gift to the world has been expressed in every way, from the invention of the car, from the invention of social media, of the internet. It had been someone's talent and idea, that collided with reality and became a gift to other people that now use it. And that is how any great thing has been built. And that is the power that you have as a creative. And with that being said, thank you so much for having me. And I wish you all the best on your journey to aligning your creative powers and building something truly impactful with it. Thank you very much. Okay. Can I go now, or do we have questions? I think you're muted.
Hi, sorry. Hi, Tunde. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this session. I think I'm currently flying above the clouds because of everything you say. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much for inspiring, the creatives of Africa. Thank you so much and also thank you so much for all the work you do. You're really inspiring. Thank you so much. Thank you for honoring our invite.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right.